let's start with a story. Picture this, it's May 29th, 1953. Two climbers stand on the summit of Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth. Air is thin, the wind howls, and every breath feels like a battle. One of them, Edmund Hillary, pulls out a camera to capture the moment. He takes a photo, not of himself, but of his climbing partner, Tenzing Norgay. Together, they've achieved what no human had before. When the news breaks, Edmund Hillary becomes an instant icon. He's knighted by Queen Elizabeth II and celebrated as a hero across the world. But what about Tenzing Norgay, the Sherpa who carried supplies, navigated treacherous terrain, and whose expertise was critical to their success? His name is barely mentioned in any reports and is often reduced to the porter or guide. But here's the truth, without Tenzing's experience and partnership, Hillary likely wouldn't have made it to the top. The two men had even agreed not to reveal who stepped on the summit first because they saw it as a team effort. But history and the media chose to focus on Hillary. Now imagine being Tenzing. You've achieved something extraordinary, something that will be remembered for generations. But your role is overshadowed by someone else's spotlight. It's not that Edmund Hillary didn't deserve the recognition, it's that Tenzing deserved it too. This story reminds us of something important. Society often celebrates the person in the spotlight, whilst forgetting those who work just as hard behind the scenes. And this happens in our everyday lives too. Social media shows us a highlight of other people's successes, making us feel like we're falling behind. But just like Tenzing Norgay's contribution, we're critical yet overlooked. Your own progress and achievements might be more significant than you realise. In today's video, we're going to explore how this same phenomenon applies to everyday life and even your finances. Social media often highlights the most glamorous moments of success, making us feel inadequate. But just like Tenzing Norgay's story shows, true value isn't always in the spotlight. We'll cover how social media creates unrealistic expectations, why wealth looks different depending on your age and your location, and how to measure your financial success realistically. By the end of this video, you'll have a fresh perspective on your finances and maybe even feel a little better about where you stand. Let's dive into how social media skews our perception of wealth. Now, let's be real for a second. Social media is designed to show us the highlights of people's lives, not their struggles or everyday realities. Before we had social media, you would only really compare yourself with your peers, your colleagues, and your neighbours. However, with social media, you compare yourself with the whole world, and it's thrown in your face daily. Now, here's why that matters. First, the illusion of elite lifestyles. Think about it. When was the last time you scrolled through Instagram or TikTok and saw someone bragging about their overdraft fees or their student loans? Instead, we see influencers jetting off to Bali, buying designer handbags, or even driving luxury cars. It creates this illusion that everyone around the world is living an elite lifestyle, except from you. But here's the thing, most of these posts don't tell the whole story. That influencer might be drowning in credit card debt or relying on sponsorship to fund their lifestyle. Just like how the history focused on Edmund Hillary whilst ignoring Tenzing Norgay, social media often hides the hard work or the struggles behind the success. Number 2, we have selective sharing. People rarely share their financial setbacks online. You won't see someone posting about how they had to skip a holiday because they're saving for a house deposit or how they've been working overtime to pay off debt. Instead, we only see their wins, and that skews our perception of what normal looks like. Number 3, we have the comparison culture. When we compare ourselves to these curated lives, it's easy to feel like we're falling behind, even if we're doing really well for our age or circumstances. But remember, what you see online is just one small piece of someone else's story. You especially can't see how happy they are behind the social media facade. So let's talk about a reality check. Are you really falling behind? Let's start today by looking at what average really is, shall we? Globally, the median average is $9,733 per year. Around 700 million people live on less than $1.90 per day, and 26% of the world lives on less than $3.20 per day. But let's zoom in on the UK, because comparing Western nations to global averages isn't fair due to the cost of living differences in those countries. In 2025, the median UK average is currently £29,380 per year. The average salary for full-time employees is £34,963, and the top 5% of earners earn £87,012 per year, with the top 1% earning £173,952. Yet studies show us that even people earning 80 to 100k often feel that their income is average. Why? Because we measure success based on those around us. If your peers earn 50k whilst you earn 40, you feel poor. But if they earn 30k, you'll feel rich. Next, let's jump into savings and how much do you keep? Maybe it's the rise of the movements like FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early, that makes us feel like failures if we're not saving 80% of our income monthly. But here's the reality. In 2025, 16% of UK adults had no savings at all. That's 8.7 million people. Almost half, 46% of people had less than £1,000 saved, and 1/3 couldn't even afford 1 month's expenses without borrowing money. The UK average saving rate is around 5%, and it's even lower in countries like the US. Even high earners aren't exempt. Nearly half of Americans earning over 100k live paycheck to paycheck. Now let's talk about spending, because this is where things get tricky. In 2025, average UK household spending is £671 per week, or £2,907 per month. Major expenses include transportation, housing and food. But here's where it gets really sobering. A quarter of Brits borrow money for essential things like food and energy. 1/3 of Brits live above their means, spending more than they earn per month. And if you're single, there's something called the singles tax, the extra cost of living alone, which averages around £9,289 per year and goes up to £21,215 in London. It's enough to get you swiping on Tinder, eh? Debt is another mountain that many people are climbing. Rising living costs means more people are borrowing just to survive. Yet social media constantly exposes us to luxury lifestyles that we can't afford, making us feel inadequate. Remember Tenzing Norgay? His contributions were critical but overlooked by history. Similarly, your steady finance progress might not be flashy, but it's still valuable. Now, let's jump into why you're probably doing better than you think. Here are some reasons why many people underestimate their own financial success. If you're doing any of these, you're probably doing significantly better than you think. Number one, you're building assets. Even if you don't have any flashy possessions, building savings, contributing to a pension or investing means that you're setting yourself up for long-term future success. Number two, we have debt levels, and they really matter. Managing your debt responsibly or avoiding it altogether puts you ahead of so many people who rely on credit cards and loans to fund their lifestyle. Number three, lifestyle inflation isn't always progress. Just because someone appears to be wealthy doesn't mean that they actually are. 40% of UK residents have less than £1,500 in savings. Nearly half of Americans earning over 100k live paycheck to paycheck, and if you're even saving 5% of your monthly income, you're doing better than most people. Next, let's talk about how you measure financial success realistically. So, how should we measure financial success? Here are 3 practical ways. Number one is to track your net worth. Your net worth equals your assets like savings minus your liabilities such as debts. Tracking this over time gives you clarity. Number two is to set personal goals. Forget what other people are doing. Focusing on whether you're meeting your goals like saving for a house deposit or paying off your loans is more important. And number three, celebrate small wins. Did you manage to save an extra £50 this month, pay off a credit card balance? These small things add up over time, so don't overlook them and please celebrate them. Remember, we measure success based on those around us. In smaller communities before social media, you could be a big fish in a local pond, blissfully unaware of the bigger fish elsewhere. But now, the internet exposes us to everyone everywhere at once, including anomalies like billionaires or influencers that make us feel small. The truth is that most people aren't living the elite lifestyles that we see online, and that is okay. Wealth isn't just about how much money you have, it's about how well you manage it and whether that aligns with your goals. And even from a global perspective, most of us are doing incredibly well compared to the billions of people living in poverty. So maybe it's time that we stop comparing ourselves to others and focus on climbing our own mountains, eh?